So one of the important things that we be able to do is unit conversion, which is, just what the name says, converting between units. But we also call this dimensional analysis. And so the reason why we also call unit conversion dimensional analysis is just dimension. So units represent amounts of different quantities, which we otherwise call dimensions, right? Like length, mass, time, and so on. And then we tack on the word analysis to it just because we're analyzing how these different how different amounts of these units relate to each other via their units. And so unit conversion, dimensional analysis, whatever you want to call it, they both mean the same thing. And so let's suppose if I asked you the question, how many seconds are in 2 minutes? And so you could probably pretty readily tell me that the answer is 120 seconds. Whoops. There's a C in seconds. 120 seconds. And so, that might seem like a simple example, but let's write out what you're actually doing in your head when you do that. So you're multiplying the amount that you were given, which was 2 minutes, and then you're actually multiplying it by 60 seconds, or we could also just write that as S, which is what I'll usually do, per 1 minute, right? And then you just get 2, so the minutes end up canceling out, and you're left with 2 times 60 seconds equals 120 seconds. So that might seem like it's just overcomplicating something that was, fairly simple to begin with. But this example illustrates a few things. So first of all, units are just like numbers. You can treat them just like numbers. So what do I mean by that? So I mean if you have like meters, for instance, and you're multiplying meters times meters, that's meters squared, right? Any number, if you just had, 5 times 5 is equal to 5 squared, and we'd call that 25, but it's essentially the same thing. Units behave exactly the same way. So that's why we can say that if we have minutes times 1 over minutes, which is the same thing as minutes over minutes, one of each, then we end up just getting, they cancel out and we end up with 1. And so that's what happened up here. We had 2 minutes times 60 seconds divided by 1 minute. And if you combine these two numbers together as one fraction, we really just had 2 minutes times 60 seconds, and then all over 1 minute. And the minutes just canceled out, just like any number would. And so that's how we got our answer. And so let's do some more examples of, we're actually doing this, what we call dimensional analysis is more useful. So first off, one of the important things to realize is that this ratio that we have here, we call this a conversion factor. So that's just the name of it. So what is a conversion factor? It's basically where if you have an equality of two different quantities, it's just taking that equality and making it a fraction. So what do I mean by that? So in this case, right, we had 1 minute equals 60 seconds, and I'll just write seconds as S, as we normally do. And so then we just took this equality and we can make it a fraction. So there are, of course, two conversion factors that we can always make. It can be 1 minute over 60 seconds, or 60 seconds over 1 minute, depending on what our final unit should be. So let's do some more examples where it actually starts becoming more useful. So let's take a second example. So so this might also seem a little bit simple at first, but hopefully you'll start seeing the relevance of this as we move on. So number 2. So if I asked you how many seconds are in 1 day, right? 1 day. So we're going to use our similar conversion factors of multiplying them all together, which is what we call dimensional analysis. That's just the process of it. So let's think of some equalities that we could turn into conversion factors. So we know that in 1 day, there's 24 hours, right? And then we also know that in 1 hour, there's 60 minutes, and that in 1 minute, there's 60 seconds. And so from this, we can get 3 different conversion factors, right? We can get 1 day over 24 hours, or we can get 24 hours over 1 day. And likewise for the 3 below here. So we could get 60 minutes over 1 hour, or 1 hour over 60 minutes. I know this might seem a little bit like unnecessary arithmetic, but I'm just trying to build the foundations that we'll build off of later on. And so this would also just be like 1 minute over 60 seconds, or it's an I and an N, or 60 seconds over 1 minute. So the conversion factor we use, and when we're doing dimensional analysis of converting units, we want to use the conversion factors that will give us the right unit at the end. So for instance, if I asked you how many seconds were in 1 day, as I did, then you know that you want to end up with seconds. That's the unit that you want to end up with in the end. So you want to have some, equal to some number of seconds. So probably, if we're looking at our conversion factors, we're probably going to want to have this one, use this one out of the 2 because it has seconds in the numerator, which is what we want over here. We want seconds in the numerator. So let's start out converting our unit. So we have 1 day, right? So let's pick matching colors here. So 1 day, and then let's multiply that. So we want to cancel 1 day out. We want to work our way to seconds. So let's do the one that cancels 1 day. So that'll be this conversion factor. So 24 hours over 1 day. And you'll also sometimes hear people say, 24 hours per day, or, more commonly, miles per gallon. Anytime that you hear the word per, it's just division. So if I told you miles per gallon, it's really miles over gallon, or gallons. So this is what miles per gallon is. So that's all we mean by per, is just the division sign. So that's just a note there. So continuing on. So now so the days just canceled out here, right? Just like numbers. So now we want to cancel out the hours to get to seconds eventually. So if we want to cancel out hours, so we're going to be using this conversion factor over here. So it's going to be 60 minutes over 1 hour. And there's 24 hours, that's just plural of 1 hour. So these are really the same unit. I could scratch out the S here, it's just hours. And so these cancel out. And so now we're almost there. So then times, and then we want to get seconds on the top. So it's going to be this one. So it's going to be 60 seconds over 1 minute, right? And if we calculate that out, it comes out to something like, well, let's see, times 3 comes out to about 86,400, right? So let's see if I can squeeze that in here. 86,400 seconds. If you wanted to write that in scientific notation, you could. It would be 8.64 times, times 10 to the 5th seconds. Is that right? 1, 2, 3. No, that's not right. 10 to the 4th seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 10 to the 4th. So that's how we would write it as scientific notation. So let's do some more examples. I know these, at first, if you've already done this before, this might seem simple, but if you're doing it for the first time, I want to make sure that you have a solid foundation of it. So number 3, and we'll do a total, I think, of 6 examples here. So 3. So we have 5. You're told that, maybe you're driving your car and you're going 5 kilometers per hour. Maybe you're obeying the speed limit in a parking lot, and you want to figure out how many meters per second you're going. So we know that our final units, we're going to want meters per second. So we have 2 different units that we want to deal with. Before we had 1 day and so on. We only had 1 unit. Now we have 2. So let's just tackle these one at a time. So again, if we look at our equalities, so 1 kilometer is equal to 10 to the 3rd meters, right? So we have 2 different conversion factors. We could use 1 kilometer over 10 to the 3rd meters, or we could use 10 to the 3rd meters over 1 kilometer. So we want to cancel out kilometers, so let's use this one. So times 10 to the 3rd meters over 1 kilometer. Right, so now we have meters on the top, which is what we want, and we just canceled our kilometers. So now let's deal with the hours. So 1 hour, let's see if I can get which color to use, purple. So 1 hour is equal to 60 minutes. So again, as we did above, you get 60 minutes over 1 hour or 1 hour over 60 minutes. And again, you want to cancel out the hours. So let's choose this conversion factor. So we have 1 hour over 60 minutes. And so the hours cancel out. And now we're left with minutes, but we want it to be in seconds. So now we need to use the conversion factor for that one. So 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds, and I'll just write it as S. Yep, that's IN. So we have 1 minute over 60 seconds, or we have 60 seconds over 1 minute. And so we want the minutes to cancel, so we're going to choose this one. Right? And then equals. And so if we end up calculating that out, it comes to about, let's see, comes to about 1.39 meters per second. And our minutes canceled out. And so as we see here, we end up with the desired units, right? Meters are left, seconds are left. The result is that we get meters per second. So so that was that problem. And so let's see, I'll make this a two-part video. So I'll continue the next 3 examples in the next video.